back to For the Love of Men podcast. My name's Courtney Shand, and I'm hosting with my dear friend, Brianna Mosier.
Hi.
The intention of this show is to bring together men and women to create healthy, polarized relationship dynamics by learning how to honor each other's natural masculine and feminine energetic core.
Yes.
Before we dive into today's episode, which I am excited about, as always, I want to introduce my friend Bri and myself, and then we'll get going.
Hello, my name's Bri. My work in the world is helping high-achieving, successful women embrace their feminine energy when they're naturally more comfortable in their masculine. And through healing deep-seated emotional wounds, through somatic-based healing practices, and learning how to embody that, shifting their dating and relationship experience to attract in more aligned and healthy masculine partners. Part of my background is in sex, love, and intimacy work too, so I love helping women explore and expand their pleasure. That's my work in the world.
Such a good summary.
Thank you.
I like that you're tweaking it. That's
Thank
great.
you.
I work with men in this space as well, working very somatically, which is just kind of from the body up, and helping you understand how to embody and really radiate that confident masculine energy that is going to help you attract the women that you're wanting to be across from on dates. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Amazing.
So let's dive in today. We wanted to talk about this because we're noticing this as a trend in the conversation, and we always like to stay on top of trends, because I was telling Bri before we record this, if we don't have this conversation now, it will just play out without any of our voices guiding the way that we want for it to go. And the way to stay empowered is to be the one that is leading and involved in the conversation. So that was our intention with this one. But we hear a lot of times from men and from women, who pays for dates these days, because no one wants to feel used for being, someone commented the other day about being a foodie call in my work, which I'd never heard of before. I thought it was really clever. Or being a booty call, which is something that we have all heard of. No one wants that. So we're going to talk about where this comes from and what to shift in order to come at this from a more empowered perspective.
Well
Ready to
said.
dive in?
Let's dive in.
Go for it.
So a couple different things that we hear often, one from the men's camp and one's from the women camp, and both valid, experiences that you're having. A lot of men share that they might feel used by paying for dates, like women come out just to be a meal ticket. And so they come out with them and they have this good time, they pay for the date, and then they don't hear from the woman again. And what will often happen is she'll end up telling her friends, oh, I got a free meal out of it, and sort of bragging. And the felt experience that men are having with that is that it feels like being taken advantage of, being used, being made fun of, not being taken seriously, not being seen. And we get that. That is a really bad experience. And then we also hear from women, and we want to shed some more light on this experience in depth. This obligation I hear from my clients all the time is like, if he pays for the date, is there something that he's looking for in exchange that he's not communicating, which has to do with physical intimacy? And there's a lot of pressure. So a lot of my clients will even hesitate to accept a man paying for a date because of the visceral retraction in their body of, am I going to be safe? We both have risks going out for dates, right? Men and women. But the risks, while the felt experiences are still valid and your concerns are real, the risks are very different for men and women. And I think that's one of the aims of the show today is we want to help you have empathy, both sides have empathy for each other and understand how to navigate this in an empowered way going forward.
Yeah, I love that. Because when we were coming up with this episode and kind of talking about this, both from our perspective and as well as our coaching perspective, we kind of came to this realization of that I'd say culturally in the dating culture, don't know how to be with our pain or our discomfort of feeling rejected or not good enough or shame in some form. And therefore it comes out as bragging. I got a free meal out of it. At least I got a good meal out of it. Or whatever men say when they sleep with a woman. I don't know.
After a date or two.
After a date.
Right.
Yeah, there's terminology that's very common. I don't hear it because I'm not a man, but where even though the relationship didn't move into the direction that maybe we were hopeful for, at least we got X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of our like write home about thing. And it comes out as bragging. And I think that's what gets back to the other side and creates this resistance of like, I need to be on guard because all of me isn't safe here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So what would you say from the men that you've spoken to in your work, when they express how it feels, when they're paying for dates, what is their hesitation? What's their fear of paying for dates?
What I hear most often is either a sense of, I want to be a provider. I want to provide this experience. And yet I am also aware of my like financial goals and I want for this to be sustainable. And therefore, I can't sustain going to a certain level of entertainment or restaurant every time. That does get expensive. And I very much understand that. And then there's another element of feeling kind of disposable or less qualified. That one isn't, I don't hear from my particular camp of men as often about that one. I think that is a different sector of the dating space. But I have gotten conversations that are around that of how she is not interested beyond a certain level of investment. So kind of feeling either used or like they can't keep up with the expectations that they are feeling put on is usually what I hear. Men, feel free, let us know. I just want to give this caveat that it is the particular type of men that I'm working with. These are kind of like the two main conversations that I hear most often.
And when that happens, how does it change before they do any work with you or shift it, right? If it's just playing out that way, how does it change how they show up in dating?
Great question. Anytime we're trying to prevent harm to ourselves or like pain of any kind, we're going in hedging, which means we're not actually showing up fully. We're going in with the version of us that we feel like is the safest bet. Instead of what is actually the safest bet is your most authentic self, the one that is willing to set and hold the boundaries, the one that is willing to say, actually, I would rather do X, Y, and Z. What do you think about that? Or how did that feel for you? It's going to give her more clear information for you to show up as that version of yourself, which is in some ways riskier, but in most like high level ways, actually the safer route, because you are going to be able to be guiding the conversation the way that feels good for you too. You're less likely to actually be used when you're the one who's choosing what you're giving in that way. And you're showing up with more integrity, which means you will be the version of yourself that you feel most proud to represent you. There's no like regret afterwards or feeling of being used in that sense, because you showed up honestly as who you were, and you can walk away and say, I did the best that I could. Next time I might do this, and this differently, but for the most part, I feel good about it. Does that answer the question?
Sort of. I hear what you're saying about going forward with clear expectations around how do you want to show up during this date. You mean like, what am I available to provide or pay for on this date? That's how they should be showing up?
Ask the question again. I might have just gone on a tangent.
That's okay. It was a great tangent.
Okay.
I liked it. When men are carrying these fears around, am I going to be used or taken advantage of? How does it shape how they show up in the dating landscape?
I think they play a different game. It's less direct. When they're guarding themselves, when they're kind of hedging with fear of what could happen, you're draining your resources, your internal resources, to be the masculine like guide. You don't have enough energy inside of you when you're like spending most of your energy hiding or hedging from feeling used. And so I may again not be answering.
No, it's like they're on guard. What you're saying.
But the more the more you're on guard, the less she's actually going to be able to get near you. The less nourishing it's going to be for you, because nothing can get in past that guard. You're not going to receive the nutrients that you would otherwise be getting across from the feminine. And the way that I always explain it is that the nourishment that you get in being across from clean, integrated, healthy feminine energy is the thing that you would need to heal this fear anyways. And so it's very counterintuitive. Not that you go in just like, here's my heart, have it. But on some level, the more that you are going in, like keeping people at arm's reach, the less of that healing and nourishing energy can get to you. And therefore, you're going to feel slightly under satisfied. Kind of like the analogy you used the other day of eating chips. If all you ever eat is snacks and you're like, I just want a full meal, you're never going to be completely satisfied when you're aiming for a full meal and getting crumbs. Even if it starts out like, ooh, chips, yeah, that sounds so good. You're not going to be craving chips every single meal of every day. You're going to get really tired of that because it's never actually like completing the craving or the like
nourishment.
need.
Right. So you end up only getting breadcrumbs of feminine energy when what you actually need is that like nourishing, playful, fun, color, warmth. Oh, that's what I wanted from being on the date.
Yeah.
I got you.
For summarizing that. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me. So they're going in a little bit guarded because are you going to take advantage or use? And I do want to be on this date because I want your feminine energy and it feels so good. But that's my hesitancy is like, am I being used to be, just pay for a meal?
Yeah. And think about like the amount of bandwidth that's being taken up when you're asking that question of, is she using me? You're using a ton of bandwidth and not actually being able to like be present to A, gather the information that would be helpful for you to decide if you do want to go out with this person again, and B, receive the nutrients that you would actually be wanting to get from that experience to start with. Because it's kind of like circulating in the back of your head there.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to pivot slightly off our original plan for the episode because I think the natural next thing for us to chat about is what paying for dates actually does for the feminine.
Yeah.
So you understand, at least from two women's perspective, we can't speak for all, but from our clients and our experience, what paying for the date and even setting up the date and the plan does for the feminine. And then we also want to chat with you about providership and the way that you can work under that umbrella of providership and still give her that feeling experience without needing to spend hundreds of dollars on a date every time you take her out. Because it's not about the monetary piece. And I think that's where things get a little clunky when I hear men chatting about this in different spaces. It's like you're under the perception that it has to be, a lot of money has to be spent in order for her to be happy. But as we always say, it's an energetic felt experience component that she's looking for. That's what paying for the dates does. And so when you understand that, then you can go, okay, wait, this doesn't have to be a meal. This is not a meal ticket. How can I create this felt experience for her? That can be $5 or $100 if that matters to you. But for women, and I can just speak for myself and for the clients I work with, paying for the dates, honestly, especially the more successful she is, paying for the dates feels like being taken care of. It feels like in all these other places in life where I am leading and running the business and running the house, or if you're a mom, right? Especially mothers, I hear this all the time because we have lots of roles where our masculine energy is required in life. To go be with your man and he pays for the date, it feels like you're in a container. We talk about that hula hoop in the previous episodes, like men hold that container and the feminine just gets to dance and flow and play and relax. Her most nourishing feminine energy to you comes out when you've created that space. The like light in her eyes, the vitality in her body, the melody in her voice, her laughter, her play, like the things you love about the feminine, 10x when there's a container of space if you creating the feeling of I've got you, I'm taking care of you. That's what paying does. You feel taken care of, you feel taken out, you feel I don't know,
invested in.
Yeah, like respected. It's so nourishing. But that happens at $100 date, and it also happens at a, I don't know, $15 coffee date where you say, I picked this walk I want to go on with you because I know you love these flowers and this kind of view, and I got your favorite coffee and I brought an extra jacket in case you're cold. Do you want to go on a walk with me?
Honestly, some of those have been my
Yes.
favorite dates.
It's so thoughtful.
It really is. So I love that you're going there, because we need to dispel the fact that you have to spend hundreds of dollars on dates, because the energy that she's looking for is that you're being intentional in her direction.
And attuned to her needs and what makes her happy. That's the felt experience.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, go
Yeah.
off.
And I think men understand this, but I hope that we can be adding to this as a woman. Like, sometimes it feels really validating to hear this from a man for us, but from a woman, that the energy that you're putting into the planning, hey, I thought of you, that is communicated at different price points regardless. If you can come from that energy, that is you providing. And that can also really be helpful to screen out. And we're going to talk to the women as well on this. We have an episode on entitled feminine energy versus empowered feminine energy that might be worth listening to as a man, because we are talking to the women too of challenging the expectations of what that means. If you're actually looking to be provided for and invested in, to be looking for this energy of providership, which is, what is he actually giving to me? What's coming in my direction intentionally from him? And can I be open to receive that? When she's coming from that space, what you're giving to her is what's going to be amplified. We talk about this all the time. The feminine is the multiplier. And so if you are providing to her what would create joy, intentionality, connection, safety, thoughtfulness, love, appreciation, adoration, like all of those things, it is creating this like multiplying factor that she can then reverberate and reflect back to you in the form of appreciation, respect, admiration, all of those things that you're craving when you're putting this effort forward. They are different expressions for the masculine and the feminine. And I think for me, when I understood that, it made so much sense in my mind of like, oh, you just speak a different language than me. Once I know the language that you speak, I have an easier time communicating with you than if I keep trying to speak at you in English and you're not on the same wavelength. Like, it's the same thing here.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when men are thinking about creating these dates that give that feeling, knowing that you can fall anywhere on the price point, I hope alleviates a little pressure when you focus on the feeling. Of course, because I know they're going to say this in the comments, there are going to be women who are looking for a monetary value with the date. They will. And, you made a great point earlier when you were saying there are certain things that men want to provide and give, and sometimes that is financial, and that's they want to give financially, and that feels good, then great, that will be really aligned with a woman like that who wants to receive financially. But I want you to know that there are lots of women who don't need that. They care so much more about feeling taken care of, feeling attuned to, feeling cared about, feeling seen, feeling safe, feeling protected emotionally, feeling protected from your wounds, right? If you're a man doing your inner work, that, I'll just say for me personally, would supersede any financial providership, because emotionally is going to be the most supportive, so knowing that, the focus gets to be on how do I create this experience and less about paying for the date. But paying for the date does make a woman feel taken care of. That's why it's a really nice gesture.
Yeah.
That's what it brings. And I agree with you that the episode on entitled feminine to empowered feminine, if you are a man listening, it's worth checking that out, because we also want you to have discernment around seeing the entitled feminine and not getting taken advantage of by that type of woman who pressures you into thinking you have to bow down to her feet in order to be worthy. Like, that doesn't feel good. That's not an empowered, healthy dynamic. But there is something really generous and supportive about a man paying. It just, it just,
Yeah. I love that you went there. I wasn't planning on going here until you just said that, but the quality I think that it really communicates is generosity. Because if you are, it's something that goes a long way in terms of relating skills, is to be generous, because there will come a time when I am not at my best and I need some generosity. And if we talk about this metaphorically, it's the same thing as you saying, I've got you. What we talk about, the phrases women love to hear, that's a very like tangible way of you saying, I've got you when you pay for the date. It's a very like intangible way of you saying, I've got you, when in the middle of an argument, you're like, you know what? I see that you're struggling right now, and I'm not going to be the one that proves myself right. I'm just going to listen to you. It's, to me, the same skill set that's needing to be developed, is to see it through the lens of how can you be generous in that moment. In the same way that providership is an energy, the provider energy is an energetic quality. In the same tone, that generosity is a quality, and it can play out in lots of different ways. So yeah, I hope that you feel a little bit more freedom, because, and I'm curious with your clientele, because you work with very high achieving women, is there a point at which that actually frees the men that they're with to be providers in other ways than financially?
Can you say again? How do you mean?
Like at some point I can pay for things for myself
As the woman.
And the expectation is, if he were going on a date and she wants to be paid for, is there a point at which I would also find it very valuable that you are providing other things than financially?
I think it's a requirement. Yeah.
Right.
The more empowered a woman is, the less focus she'll have on a one-dimensional view of providership.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of like frees you from this idea of you need to live at a certain threshold. I think if I understand just from speaking with women, they want for you to be like stable to the same level of stability that they're at. But there's this whole like point above surviving financially where you want to like play with the other person. And that is, I think, where the energy of providing gets to be the most fun.
Totally agree. Yeah, I will say with my clients who are, a lot of them are very high earners in their fields, very successful and intelligent women. And they will often say to me, most of the time, I don't mind going 50-50 when I've been with somebody for longer, but I admittedly do want someone to lean in a little more than 50-50. It's kind of like they're like afraid to admit it because they're such empowered women, you know? But what would feel good to them is if their partner covered 60-70, and I'm talking about later on down the line. But they would do 50-50 because finances aren't an issue, but it's not because of the money piece. It's because they want to feel taken care of, and like you are their safety net, like they can lean back and feel the support of you. And because of that, I was just telling you this the other day.
I know.
Because of that, they can take bigger risks. I was telling Courtney, I've had to own, like, that would feel really good to me if I had a partner who could take care of living expenses, not because I can't do it on my own. I own my house. I'm very well taken care of. I can take care of me. But because knowing a partner had my back would allow me to take my expendable income and reinvest it into places that are really meaningful to me and in my business. And with that capital free, could I 10x my business? I know I could.
Yes.
But I can only do it not because he's providing financially, but because of the energetic experience it would create for me that he's got me. Now, let's say my monthly bills, I'm just making this number up. Let's say my monthly bills are $3,000 or $4,000 by myself. Of course I could cover it. But if a partner does that, then that frees me up energetically to not have to worry, to know I'm taken care of, so I can play, I can be expansive, I can be creative. And women are multipliers. So it's the stability in the container that makes me go, oh, I can relax. And also I can be creative and launch more programs, and I'm going to have more energy and da-da-da-da-da. It's the masculine energy component that is so stabilizing and grounded. It just does something to my body, you know? Like,
it does.
Like, even hearing it, I'm like, you're like, yes, right. Because it's not that I can't. Of course I can.
Yeah.
But it does make me feel supported, and it would make me feel like that's my man. You know what I mean? Like, he's got me. That's creating that polarity. And one more thing I'll add to this. The most empowered women I know, when they end up with very generous, healthy partners, because I'm blessed that all my close friends and family have very healthy partnerships, those women are so generous in return to their men. The most generous men, that woman is like, well, I saw this and I thought of him, so I got it. And I saw this and I thought of him, so I got it. And this is his favorite meal, so I'm going to make this tonight. And he loves this color, so I want to come home wearing this color. Like, they're always thinking about, how can I make him happy? How can I take care of him too? because it's a dance of this makes you happy. Okay, well, this will make you happy.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to make you happier.
Yeah.
It's this, you see how it's such a different dynamic than, well, I paid for dinner.
Yeah.
So shouldn't you pay for the next one? Do you see how much more tense that energy is versus this upper level, like you were talking about, beyond survival, where you guys are co-creating and playing together and satisfying each other and adding to each other versus don't take too much from me. Okay, now you don't take too much from me.
Yeah.
Now you can't take too much. I'll give you this, but don't try to pull on me. It's this hedging that you talked about in the beginning. Very
So
different when you can understand the energetic component and you just focus on energy. I think you're going to have a really different experience with this financial piece in dating.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, because I have had the experience too of when someone is taking the pressure of like the support, it frees up all of that energy to be creative, which can look like being creative for ways to make you happier, to make your life better, to think of you differently. And I almost get this like it frees up all of my masculine energy to be like, look how much further I can go.
That's what it is.
It is like the full expansion of me gets to come online, which is from the men that I've spoken with, like what they're after. They want like even more. What is she capable of? Not only like in creating her own life and resources and will bring that back to the unit, but the emotional bandwidth that gets to be expanded too. I get to be even happier, even sillier, even more playful, even more creative, even more expressive, all of those things, even more sensual, even more blah, 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 whatever the thing is. It is truly a 10x point beyond survival. Like anything above that is where we're actually both creating together. We're not just trying to figure out how to survive and do this thing like and stay alive. That's where the conversation is happening if you're coming from this like hedging space, exactly where you summed it up. So I was like, we already summed this up.
And here we are again.
Full circle, we're back.
You know, I was going to say for bonus points, if you're going to pay for the date and you know you're going to pay for it, then why not full send on creating that energetic experience and really own it? Because I will tell you, for myself and for the clientele that I work with, which I've already described are these like really high achieving, successful women, they are thinking about who's going to pay for the date. And they're also thinking, my clientele is also thinking, I don't want him to feel like he has to, but I kind of want him to because it would make me feel taken care of. But I don't want him to think I'm a moocher. Because remember, these women are built on independence and not wanting to be a burden. So it's like Courtney described the other day, every woman's love language is not having to ask.
I saw that on a thread somewhere and I was like,
yeah. And these are, again, this clientele of women who are high achieving. They are very used to getting things done on their own, very used to relying on themselves, and they can and they will, but they often feel guilt about receiving. So that's something that I help these women with all the time, is to melt more into their feminine energy. So if you're going to pay for the date and you're dating a woman like this, I think it would go a long way for you to be like, if it's all right with you, I would really like to take you out and pay for the date tonight. From the beginning. See Courtney's face? See, if I said that to her and I was a man, she would literally, you would watch her body soften. And that's the cue. We've told you guys this before. Watch to see if her body viscerally softens in front of you. I would love to take you out to include paying for the date. Please don't reach for your card at the end. It would make me so happy to take care of you.
I'm sweating. I'm wearing a sweater right now, which is unfortunate.
It's not good for sweating. Dad joke. So if you're going to do it, I would say full send on it.
Yeah.
Create the whole energy and see, just for your own fun, the feminine energy that exudes out of that woman. Now, that will vary based on how comfortable she is, because a woman who's uncomfortable in her feminine might have a hard time with this. She's going to get a little squirmy.
Which is also something you'd want to see. Like, you can't win. You're going to be getting the information that you need, or it's going to create a corrective experience for you to play full out and do this with your full chest.
You can't lose. Is that what you meant? You said you
What
can't win. You can't win.
You can't lose. You will win. you can't lose, because you're going to get the information that you need, or you're going to get a corrective experience for you where it is going to be deeply nourishing and healing to a part of you that you may not have realized needed it.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
love
for her
this.
too.
Right.
Because what we were talking about in that same vein, we act like you guys, since you're in our living room, like we act like you were in our conversation yesterday too.
Yeah. Well, Courtney was saying earlier.
The last time we were talking, is that is often the hardest reach for the woman who's the most independent.
Mhm.
And that's why it's her love language, is for you for her to not have to ask, for you to say, I've got it taken care of, because it creates such a softening in her to not have to ask, because she does struggle with, I don't say feel, but she does struggle with feeling guilty for asking or needing support in certain ways. And yet it does feel really good to be supported.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the masculine equivalent would be from people that I've spoken to, but
Oh, can I give an option? If you're somebody who feels a little bit of shame or doesn't feel comfortable talking about your emotions,
perfect, yes.
and you're sitting across from a woman who's emotionally available, and she'll say to you like, wow, that must have been really hard, and you feel validated, the way that you soften and you're like, is this a container where I can I talk
so
about
seen
this
right now?
Yeah. And she's still seeing me as attractive and her man. It's a pretty healing experience. And also something for men that's hard to ask for, I gather, from what we hear.
Yeah. Or for her to say, like, I know you're going to figure it out. Like, full confidence. I have no doubt you're going to figure it out. That does something to the masculine that I think is probably the equivalent. Like, most men aren't like, I really just need some encouragement right now.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with feeling confident that I can figure this out, and I just need a little bit of validation. For her to just have already said, I know you're going to figure it out. I have every confidence that you are going to be successful at this. You're the man for the job. I fully back you. Like, those things, it's the same felt experience for her to not have to ask.
So good. This feels like the natural next point we need to address.
Perfect.
Okay. So the fear for women on the other side with paying for dates, and what I'd like to caution you with is, if you want to create this energetic experience for her, we have to let go of an outcome. If you go in paying for a date and you're thinking, I hope she sleeps with me after this, that's going to be felt more than anything else. Unfortunately, we have developed like hyper-vigilant sensitivity to being aware of if a man is paying for sex, not paying to get to know you and be with you. And it's, you see, her body is like, ugh, because you can feel that. You can feel when someone is flexing from a bravado place to try to impress you to get you to sleep with them, or to put you in a place of obligation so that you feel like you have to sleep with them. And this is why women have a lot of fear often, that resistance to receive, because historically this has been an issue for a long time. And so now we do go on dates, and even me, with all the work I've done, it is still in the back of my mind, with how much I love men and have cleared my trauma and deeply in my feminine energy. I'm also not asleep. Like, I'm aware that some men will go on dates because they want sex, and I've already decided in my mind that is or isn't something that I'm open to with that person based on where our connection is, because we've been put in a position where we have to for safety reasons. So, when we talk about women going on these dates, you're feeling like, am I going to get used financially? Women are feeling like, am I going to get used sexually? Am I going to get taken advantage of? And we have to be totally honest. Am I going to get kidnapped? Am I going to be pushed into something that I don't want to do? Am I going to be pressured into it? Is it going to be uncomfortable? We are location sharing with each other. We're texting each other your profiles, not your, you know what I mean, but the, made up person in our heads. His last name, how did you meet him? Our friends are screening each other. It's not, I'm not even exaggerating. These are real safety concerns with any date. If I tell my mom, I don't do online dating, but right now, but if I told my mom I'm going on a date with someone I met online, the first thing she'll do is reference Jeffrey Dahmer. That's its own issue that she has. Okay. But she's terrified of, like, who are you meeting? Where are you going? You don't know this person. So while you're risking $50 on a date, I'm thinking about my safety. I'm thinking about, can I get out of a situation I don't want to be in? And what would it require of me? And do I have my pepper spray? And do my friends know I'm going? It's not an exaggeration. It's the real felt experience. So while your risk is totally valid, and I get why you don't want to be taken advantage of, women's risk is for their physical safety and their health. And one step further being, if you do get to a place where you're physically intimate and someone's getting either pressured into sex or it's going further than they want it to go, she's also considering, what is my access to reproductive health care right now? Because as things have started to shift in this climate, we're not giving, the laws are now changing, right? And there's not as much accessibility to things like contraceptives or STD prevention and testing, et cetera, right? Women's reproductive health care being that umbrella. So me as a woman now in this world, I go in knowing that my reproductive health care is limited and inaccessible to a lot of people at this minute. And that creates even more fear. What if something accidentally happens, even if we do use contraceptives? Am I going to have care to take care of myself? What if what if it's complicated? If the pregnancy is complicated and you don't have access to reproductive care? So I can hear the tension in my own voice as I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
Because you do everything you can. And the reality is there's still this fear of unfortunately, some people don't have good intentions and they are bigger and they're faster and you feel like this. And then there's not a societal support underneath for your health. So the risk feels huge at times. Now, obviously, we are grounded people and we can, learn how to create as much as we can internal safety, but I think it has to be acknowledged in this conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me go off.
Yeah.
I asked permission. But listen, if I'm teaching about sex and pleasure, we have to bring this up in the conversation.
It does need to be part of the conversation. And before we got started with this, that's what we were saying of if we're willing to have the conversation on the side of men's experience of feeling used for paying for dinner, we also have to have the side of the conversation of why that is a challenge for women to receive. And if women are wanting to have the conversation of why it feels like I now owe him something else, whether it's more time, attention, physical intimacy, whatever it is, we also, as women, have to be willing to have the conversation as to why men are feeling this way as well. That is the way forward, is to start acknowledging both sides so that we can start creating different experiences with who we're showing up as, with how we're showing up to the dating process, knowing you probably have some resistance around this because that's been your lived experience and I honor that. And this has been my lived experience and I would like for that to be heard too. If we're not willing to have both of those conversations, to me, it's just kind of stirring these victim echo chambers where it's
yes,
oh, women are the worst. They just want free food and to use me, or men are the worst. They only want, sex for a cup of coffee. These aren't helpful conversations. We actually want to move this forward. And to do that, I feel very strongly that we have to be willing to have both. That's part of emotional maturity, is to be able to hold two realities as equal simultaneously. That can be your experience and this can be my experience, and neither one is better or worse. They just both are reality. How are we wanting to use this information to move forward?
When you think about, you made a great point earlier that I'd love to lay up you into.
See if I take the layup.
You can change it if you want to.
No pressure.
But you made a great point earlier about how, if we're thinking of men losing money as being the risk, and women, I don't want to say losing sex, because I feel like it perpetuates this narrative, this idea of sex and it making you used up. You know what I mean? And I don't want to get into those weeds here. But opening your body to somebody new and that risk, how can we help men understand how it's a little bit different? Does that make sense?
Yeah. They're two different conversations in my mind. It depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from a finite perspective or an infinite perspective, for both of them, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because that will clarify things of like, if resources feel finite to you, that you only have a certain amount and you can't make more, you're going to be operating with them in a different paradigm than you would if you have the experience of like reaching for more, creating more, having more come to you. That's a different point of view of the world. And I think it's probably the same with like sexual energy. You can, cultivate that and build yourself and do healing and all of those things. But at that point, it becomes a health safety risk where money doesn't have inherent risk to your personhood. If you are coming from this paradigm of I can create more resources, there's always more available, kind of an abundant lens, it may feel like a risk of like, man, that didn't play out the way that I wanted, and now I don't have that $50 anymore, but I can make more, as opposed to, and now I have this like perpetual thing that I'm having to deal with, regardless.
As a woman's sexuality,
Yeah.
right? How it could affect her health.
Yeah.
And you can't undo sex where you can renew money, right? Of course, your finances are important, but it is renewable. But sex and the experiences it create, and unfortunately the trauma it can create if it's not a decision that was, if it wasn't consensual, if there's trauma involved, if there's pressure involved, those are things that take years to recover from. And even then, you are not the same. You're just not the same person, and you can't open your body the same way that you did before. And you do walk in the world with fear. It's deeply damaging. It just is. And I help women recover from this all the time. I'm happy to do it. But that's why when we talk about risking money, yes, of course, that's important. But a sexual experience that doesn't feel safe, the way that trauma like infiltrates your body, I would not wish on anyone. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
So we have to acknowledge the very real risks and the difference in those risks. And I think for you guys as men listening to the show, what a compassionate, empathetic lens this now gives you. Because now you're understanding that most all women are walking in with just even a little bit of fear of like, okay, where's my out? Am I going to get pressured? What would I do? How would that happen? Because it's real. Women are always thinking about safety. And if that's in the forefront of your mind, how you approach the date might change. I went out with someone recently and he offered to pick me up. And the way he phrased it was, I'd love to pick you up. And if you're not comfortable with that, I'm happy to meet you there. It didn't have to be said because it was just understood. And the fact that he acknowledged it softened me again. Oh, okay, great. He also made it very clear he wanted to pay for the date. Softened me again. But there was no pressure, and I could tell just by the communication of like, I'm, whatever works for you. That felt like such masculine providership, protection, safety that I could truly relax. Instead of him being like, I'd love to pick you up. It's like, well, me too, but
I don't know you.
I don't know.
And I don't want you to know where I live yet. So.
Yeah. And yeah. So I think you guys have such an advantage in being able to empathize with women's experience, right?
Which is such a good point. We talk about women's safety all the time. And we probably will continue to talk about it because it's part of the broader conversation that needs to be had. Because I just don't know that men have the same felt experience. Not that you're not equally vulnerable to mishaps or accidents or being
taken advantage
of, but it is a very different experience based on historical context, what we have historically had as norm. So yeah, I think that's a really great point that you bring up.
It's also, I think, worth mentioning that the number one place where things like SA and rape happen is on dates with acquaintances that someone has met one time. I think it's like 87% of rapes. I mean, it's really intense. Wow. Sorry, we probably can't say that word on YouTube. You might have to screen it out. So annoying because we're talking about it from an educational place. But knowing that imagine the tension in someone's body. I think you guys are at an advantage listening to the show and having empathy for women's experience and knowing that they're looking for an energetic component of being taken care of and feeling safe and feeling protected. The paying for the dates. Do you see why it's like so much bigger than just the payment?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's like the transaction, and then there's the thing that's actually needing to be talked about.
Yeah. And to find out like that someone just wants, they're paying for the date to get sex, the way that you feel used for your money, women feel used for their bodies and almost like exploited a little bit, deceived, taken advantage of. It makes you feel dehumanized. Like, this is your body. It's sacred. Of course, your money matters, but your body, like letting someone into your body is so vulnerable and intense.
Which goes back to the value of intimacy that we were talking about when we were coming up with this, of like, the way around this is to actually start respecting the intimacy that is available. The way around this for men is to start seeing how you can and want to be generous, what feels authentic to you, and you're looking for someone who is able to receive authentically what you like giving. If you're giving from a place of, I like giving this thing, whether it's financial resources, I'm a great earner, I love giving people financial things, I'm a really compassionate listener, I love giving my ear, my shoulder, whatever the thing is metaphorically there, it's almost like inexhaustible, because it creates this like self-fueling thing that we were talking about, of that kind of upper paradigm of beyond survival. It is a self-fueling cycle up here, where you're giving because I'm getting, and I'm getting because you're giving. It's this like mutual, it's limitless giving, limitless receiving. It just feels so nourishing that I want to give more. That's the paradigm that we want to start shifting into. And that actually happens when we start respecting the intimacy that is available. This is a person, a human that you're across from. And if you stop seeing it that way, you will approach the date in a way that is not only hedging, but really limiting the opportunity for you to rise into that paradigm and see what that person is capable of creating with you, which is the magic.
Wow, what a great way to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
Like, you just play in a different paradigm, and both people, that this is a human in front of you paying for this date, their resources. This is a human in front of you showing up with her energy, vulnerably coming to the date too,
Because I think that is the point. That's the take home point, is both of you are vulnerable. You don't get to decide how this is going to play out. You get to show up as the best version of yourself, who's actively engaged, giving what you want to give, and or looking for what it is you're wanting to receive, and being gracious as a recipient of that, letting it stay in the human realm here, instead of creating these like expectations or fears or hyper-vigilant reactions that we naturally have. If we can be aware of those things, we can clear them out and just connect human to human. I think it's going to be a little bit more nourishing for you in the dating space.
This episode is such a good example of our healthy third way forward we always talk about. It's like both of these perspectives valid, there's real risks, and then how do we move forward together with empathy on both sides about what the experience is like, and give each other what we're needing. It's that simple. I feel good about this.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add?
When you were talking, something was coming to me, but it's not anymore, so it'll wait.
Well,
it will wait.
We appreciate you tuning into the episode, and if you've made it this far, I personally really appreciate you witnessing that and hearing women's perspectives, and it makes me so happy that we have so many male listeners now. Like, truly, I go to bed every night and think that it makes me thrilled that our listenership is mostly men, because you give us the opportunity to share so many things that women in our lives, and between Courtney and I and in our circle, we talk about privately, and we always think if men just knew this about women, oh my gosh, it'd be so much easier for them to win with women and connect with women. And we would stop like missing each other slightly. And if women just knew this about men, they would stop missing each other. You'd stop misinterpreting men.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're here on the show and you're willing to listen just makes me really happy. And thank you for spending time with us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I came back.
Yay!
Side note, the thing about when you were saying earlier that he said, this is what I want. Is that okay? Like, is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that works so well is because you're actually leading by paying attention to her. Oof. This won't work if you are saying whatever you want. That's the caveat, because a lot of my clients come from this more nice guy energy. This is not saying, if you want me to pick you up, or if you want me to meet you there, or if you want this, or if you want that, it's saying, I would like this. This is the experience I would like to create for you. And I'm very aware that you are an autonomous other human. It creates healthy space, and that is hot. That is the bad boy energy that needs to be integrated in a healthy way, where it's like, I see you over there as a person that can make her own decisions. This is what I see for us. And I just want to check in. How does that feel for you?
Feels great.
Right? That's why it works.
Yes, I am.
So it's like a healthy pressure of like, I'm here. And then you're just holding the space. You're just like standing there. You're not like advancing until she does say like, yes, that would feel good. That's the visual of what you're doing when you're saying, this is what I want to create. I would love to take you on a date. I want to pay for it. I want to spoil you. I want to create this experience for you. That's the face you're going to get.
When do I be ready, Courtney?
But really, be ready at 8. I'll pick you up, or I can meet you there, whatever feel better. That is. Now we're spiraling. I just wanted to add that because very tangibly, that's what it's going to look like. That's why it works so well, is because you're just saying it with your full chest, and you're standing there sturdy enough that you can handle however she does respond. You're listening for it. You're paying attention to her. You're attuned to what her response is going to be. And that's what is going to be very, very helpful.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
This is how, you know how people say they want to ask permission to kiss, but they feel like if they ask you permission, it's not going to be as hot.
Yeah.
You could say, what happened, man? You could just say, I'd really like to kiss you. That statement is like, do you see? She liked it. I'd really like to kiss you. How do you feel about that? Or, are you okay with that? What do you think? How would that feel for you? Ask an open-ended question. I'd really like to, but the statement is the like invitation pulling in, and it's hot because it's consensual. So she's relaxed knowing that you're not going to advance without her knowing, right? And he's letting you know, I'd like to come forward. Like, I'm in this, but I do want to make sure you're cool with it. It creates, anytime you create safety, I'm telling you, people think it's nice guy. It is not nice guy. It is so hot.
We want to be with nice guys. I don't understand. That's the reframe. We want to be with people who are nice to us. It's the nice guy energy that needs to be oomphed up. And that happens when you're willing to state what it is that you want. That's the simple fix. You state what you want, and then you can be as nice as you want after that. That's great.
I'd really like to kiss you. What do you think? Would you allow me to kiss you? I don't think that is, I'm just saying, there's nothing about that that's wrong in my mind. Because remember, it's the feeling. She wants to feel wanted. She wants to feel safe. So the way that you say those things creates that felt experience, which is very different. You look confused.
No, I'm just saying, yeah.
Oh, okay. It's different than the experience of like, can I kiss you? See how it sounds different? I'd really like to kiss you. Would that be okay?
I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for consent. There's a difference. One is very little boy energy, permission. Can I, may I, am I allowed to? And the other is, I would like this and I want you to participate equally.
Nailed it.
Nailed
it.
Yeah.
Wow. Good thing we didn't stop the show. I mean, I hope you stayed this long because this is gold.
Yeah, this is not at all what we planned, but it came out exactly how it's supposed to, as it always does.
It's like a first date pro tip sprinkled all in here. If you love the show, please share it with someone that you think would also love it or benefit, or needs to hear it. Or if this is a topic of conversation that's come up between you and your guy friends, send this to them.
Yeah.
You have the most influence among men. If you care about these messages going to women, send them to the men in your life as a man, because you're taking that emotional labor off us. And thank you. Truly. And we try to create these resources in a way that is like very shareable and approachable to your friend group. So if you're willing to share it with your dad, your grandfather, your high school teacher from way back when, I don't know, send it as much as you can. If you want more from Courtney or you want to work with her, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Thank you.
You will not go wrong. It's Courtney_Shand. And your website's Courtney Shand.
Yep.
You can apply there.
Yep.
My stuff is Building Bree or Building Bree Coaching. So you can check me out on TikTok, Instagram. Website's Building Bree. That's it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. 2 weeks. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bye.